I want to talk about a legendary fighter in Andre SOG, Son of God, Ward. Andre Ward, if you've been paying attention to his videos and interviews on YouTube, has been talking to some amateur boxers and young boxers and giving them tips and pointers and secrets to how he was able to accomplish what he accomplished in the sport of boxing so far. A veteran of 30-something fights, Andre Ward is at the pinnacle of the sport of boxing, unofficially the pound-for-pound #1 boxer in the world, though the Ring magazine does not indicate that he is such at the present moment in time. All of his accolades and his status points to him being such. Now, Andre Ward mentioned a number of fighters he looks up to and looked up to while he was growing up as a boxer, and the list cannot be finer. The first being the excellent, the untouchable, y'all must have forgot, Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. brought to boxing something that had never been seen in the sports of boxing. Roy Jones Jr. brought flashiness, pizzazz, style, entertainment, sharpness and quickness, and a certain degree of serpentine, ambush-like fighting. When you didn't expect it, he would attack you with incredible timing at some wonderful angles. He was quick, he was fast, he was powerful, he was entertaining. He'd rap coming to the ring. He would then put on a show for the audience. He would have antics in spectacular fashion, and then he had boxing skill. Not only was he quick, but he also had certain fundamentals of the boxing game and certain other improvisational skills. He was able to dance off the rope and throw a right or left hook on his opponent and catch him when they didn't expect it. His jab was such a beautiful thing to behold. He would feint with the shoulder and throw the jab at an angle where his opponent would get hit, stunning his opponent. It wasn't so much the power of Roy Jones Jr. as it was his timing, when he would hit his opponent when they least expected it. Besides that, he was flashy, he was loud, and he was sensational to watch. Roy Jones Jr. was the complete package in the boxing ring. Must-see TV. You would dial in to see Roy Jones Jr. fight. And Andre Ward wasn't the only admirer of Roy Jones Jr. There was another who is now known as TBE. His name, Floyd Mayweather Jr. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. was an admirer of Roy Jones Jr. And so Andre Ward naturally was an admirer of Floyd Mayweather Jr. When I used to be growing up watching these two fighters, I always thought of Floyd as a little brother of Roy Jones Jr. And Floyd admired Roy so much, he copied a lot of things from Roy Jones Jr.'s style. You'd hear Floyd say, "I always try to hit my opponent when they least expect it." More of a classical boxer than Roy Jones Jr. was, and less sensational, less flamboyant than Roy was, Floyd still had his flashy nature. Floyd still touted his undefeated record. Floyd still went in the footsteps of Roy striving to be undefeated and beat everyone, and Roy made it look oh so easy. Similarly, Floyd, walking in the footsteps of Roy, beat everyone, though he didn't knock out everyone, but he made it look oh so easy. Roy didn't have to use a jab to set up his offense. Floyd didn't have to use a jab to set up his offense. Roy Jones Jr. took on some spectacular names, never got the credit for it. Floyd took on some spectacular names, never got the credit for it. Roy Jones Jr. was accused by Larry Merchant of not taking risks. Floyd Mayweather Jr. was accused by Larry Merchant of not taking risks. And we can go on and on and on. Roy Jones Jr. wants to face Conor McGregor. Have an MMA fighter fight a boxing match. Roy Jones Jr. was the first to do this, wanting to face Anderson Silva and have him fight him at a boxing match. The only difference is that where Roy was not able to succeed at being an undefeated fighter because it was taken from him, and Floyd succeeded at that, as well as Roy not being able to really maintain his untouchable record, and Floyd being able to do so. That only being the difference in the two boxers. Of course, Floyd having more fundamentals than Roy did, being more defensively responsible than Floyd was. Now, the third fighter that Andre Ward has picked is Bernard Hopkins. I mean, when we talk about records need to be broken, Bernard Hopkins is the longest reigning champion above his prime and the oldest reigning champion. He is the longest reigning middleweight champion, and he is the oldest reigning champion. Bernard Hopkins being world champion up to the age of 48 years of age, passing Archie Moore and George Foreman. At the age of 50, his career overed, some 20 years past his prime. And to be at the top of the game for almost 20 years is remarkable, especially past your prime. Bernard Hopkins could only have done that and have such a long career because of his boxing skill. Now notice that Andre Ward loved all intelligent, very smart boxers in the ring with great ring IQ. Boxers who may not have knocked out their opponents every single time, but knew how to get the win over their opponents by outthinking them, outmoving them, and outplaying them. Every one of these fighters I just mentioned, except for Roy Jones Jr., had a complete all-round game, meaning they could box on the inside, on the outside, and at mid-range, and almost fight any dimension of fighter, and almost any style of fighting. Floyd being the epitome of this, being able to fight any style, any range, any dimension of fighter. Roy Jones Jr., most styles, as well as Bernard Hopkins. Now, this is what Andre Ward incorporates into his game. He admires Floyd for many different reasons, Roy for many different reasons, and Bernard Hopkins. And if you go and watch interviews, you will hear people say that Andre Ward is basically a mixture of Roy Jones Jr., Floyd Mayweather Jr., and Bernard Hopkins. While we haven't seen the wow factor a lot from Andre Ward of late, he hasn't been able to get the job done like Bernard Hopkins. Sometimes ugly, sometimes not the most pretty looking fights. But he's always been fundamentally sound like Floyd Mayweather Jr. is. And defensively minded like Floyd Mayweather Jr. is. And Andre has borrowed things from Floyd that he couldn't get from Bernard Hopkins or Roy Jones Jr. And because of that, he's able to beat bigger opponents like Sergey Kovalev in a close battle, coming off a pretty long layoff. And that is what's so impressive about him. Now, to be honest with you, his favorite fighter is Roy Jones Jr. But don't let that fool you. It doesn't mean that because you have a favorite, you're learning more from that fighter than from this fighter or this fighter. But I can understand why Roy Jones Jr. would be his favorite fighter. Roy Jones Jr. in his prime, and even a little bit after his prime, had some remarkable things he did in boxing. Things that Mayweather borrowed from. And Hopkins, though not as spectacular, sensational, and pretty to look at, was very effective outside of his prime. Now, when you take this particular combination of fighters and you put them together, you get a remarkable, unbeatable fighter. And that's what you're looking at when you watch Andre Ward. He really has a really great combination of the top tier fighters in the world to look at. And for that reason alone, he is the dude who more than likely will beat anybody at light heavyweight and any weight class he campaigns at. On that note, you guys have a great one.